Welcome to Missing in Ohio, a podcast devoted to telling the stories of Ohio's missing loved ones. I am your host, Kelly Hammonds. Before we begin, I would like to apologize for the delay in episodes. There has been a lot going on behind the scenes in both my personal life and in my investigations. Going forward, I will release an episode every 2 weeks, but I will strive for weekly episodes. This week's episode is Chapter 7, The Disappearance of John Myron Reed. John Myron Reed is a missing adult from Zanesville, Ohio. John was last seen by his mother on November 29, 1998, at his apartment. John was 20 years old at the time of his disappearance and would be 40 years old today. John is a white male who is approximately 5 foot 6 inches tall and 175 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. If you have any information on the disappearance of John Myron Reed, please contact the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office at 740-452-3637. For 20 years, John Myron Reed has been missing, but it hasn't stopped his mother Sarah from hoping that one day she will have answers as to what happened to her son. There are many suspicious people and circumstances in John's disappearance. In small towns, people talk, and there is no shortage of rumors when it comes to John's disappearance. Someone, somewhere knows exactly what happened to John Reed, and it's time they come forward and bring answers to his family. Today, I will be joined by John's mother, Sarah. Hello, Sarah, and welcome to Missing in Ohio. Let's begin by you telling us a little bit about John.
John was just a kid when he came up missing. He was 20 years old. Now he's 40. It's been 20 years. John was a good kid. I think he just got mixed up with the wrong category of people.
Did you and John have a close relationship?
Yes, we did. We had it real close. I seen that boy on and off probably 20 times a day. And if he couldn't find me, he'd call and call till he found me.
In the days leading up to John's disappearance, what was his life like?
Well, he did work somewhat different places, but like I say, I believe that John was mixed into drugs. Drugs played a big role in this.
Okay.
I don't believe that John was in it to be like a user. I believe John was in it for the money.
On the day that he disappeared, you were actually at his house and spent time with him putting together an entertainment center. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. And he got a phone call. And he said, well, Mom, he said, I got to go. I said, oh, that's okay, son. I said, because I'm getting ready to leave here anyway, which was me and my daughter and her boyfriend at the time. She's married to now. And we laughed, and on the way going, I guess I bypassed an automobile that was headed his way. Is what I was told afterwards. And I didn't hear nothing from him, and, that's not my John not calling me. Because he would call. And so I'd call him, and I got no answer. It always, I didn't get anything. And then finally I got a phone call telling me, wanted to know if I seen him from his roommate. And I said, no, I haven't. I said, I seen him a couple of days ago. He said, I'm coming over. He said, I need to talk to you. Something went down, something went wrong. I swallowed my heart, just like a mother's instinct, You knew something was wrong. And he said, don't call nobody till I get there. Well, I went ahead and I called anyway. And it took him probably about 2.5 hours, 3 hours to get to my house, which would have took him any other time, 10 minutes maybe, 15 at the most. And they all wanted it, like, I felt that there was something that he knew what went wrong, but wasn't telling me, because why would they want to hang out at my house for it and want to know every incoming call I got and every outgoing call was made? And finally, I just had to put a stop to it and said, if you can't help me, you can't tell me, then you ain't going to be hanging at my house. And then from there, it just went whoop. I didn't hear much more.
When John's roommate told you not to call anyone, did you call anyone? And if so, who did you call?
I called the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department. I lived in the county, and so did my son lived in the county.
Did the roommate give a reason for not wanting you to call?
No, it did not really say. Well, who's calling? Who's calling? Who's calling? And I wouldn't give them the information. I'd tell them it was somebody else, because I thought it was none of their business knowing. That's my personal, life. But they wanted to hang out to see who all would come and who was coming and going, And that's what really led me up to knowing that they knew something.
So he had 2 roommates?
He had 3.
Before John disappeared, did you see his roommates frequently?
No. I didn't see him. No. No. John would come to my house.
So you called the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office to file a report. Tell me a little about that.
Larry Brocklehurst is the one that came to my house and sat and talked to me about it, and he took the names of who lived with him and stuff like that, and he told me that he knew John was into drugs before, and that he had a picture of John, which that was the picture that they used. So Larry must knew more than I knew, because my son knowed I am not a drug person. And he knew that not to bring anything like that to my house, because when my son was 16 years old, he got mixed up into drugs. I sent my son from my home. I had him removed. I told him I don't have that in the home. His dad took him. His dad had him for over a year and a half. He comes back to, calls and begs and pleads with me, Mom, please let me come home. I promise I'll never do anything like that again. Well, I let him come back after a year. And he never brought nothing to my home. Not whether they maybe thought he did, but if he did, I sure didn't say it. He tried to sneak it in behind, to where I didn't say it.
So John was basically shielding you from what he was doing?
Kinda, yes. Tried to shield me from what he was doing.
While researching John's disappearance, I read online that he has an unspecified learning disability. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
John was a slow learner. John had problems with his inner eardrums. Things were as thin as a piece of paper. And when John went to school, John read lips. John couldn't really hear. And which set John back, which made him become and he was in all learning disability classes.
And what did the police do after you filed the missing persons report?
Well, the way I understood that they were supposed to check out some calls on this or that, and I know that it took me a long time to get them to go into the place where John lived at, to get them to go in. And finally, when they did go in, they told me, oh, well, they found this and they found that. And I know that they didn't. Because I was personally there. You know, my eyes don't deceive me. You know, I've been there. I knew when I was at John's house how dirty that his roommates lived and everything. Then I noticed after I get them to go in, the roommate's place was just perfect. The girls' clothing were all removed, everything out of the house. The only ones were there was John and the guy. All the girls' clothing and everything was gone. They had jewelry laying perfectly on the dresser, just like, you know, some high-plutin person would have lived there. But it didn't look like that the last time I was there.
I noticed online that it only lists the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office as the investigating agency, but doesn't list an actual detective. Do you have a new detective that you are working with?
There's been so many detectives on there that I personally went out there and to talk with them, and I took Lily with me. They told me they're not going to do nothing about it because they messed up somewhere down the line. They're not going to do nothing.
Is it classified a murder case?
They believe that he's been murdered. Let's put it that way.
Do you know what leads them to believe that?
Must be whatever they got from people that they've talked to. And when I went in to get visitation rights for my granddaughter, and he went to court with me, Larry Rocklehurst did, and told the judge that he believed John was dead. And that should have been on record at the juvenile court system. Steve Buck would have had that. Because he was the judge at the time, was Steve Buck. And then he went over to the big courts even and told them the same thing. When I was sitting there in the sheriff's department, me and Lily was talking, it came up about our DNA on file. Well, when it was supposed to went to name, they called me in and asked me to come in for a DNA swab test, and his dad a swab test. No, Larry didn't do it. It was another detective that did it, and I can't remember the name. But wherever it went, I think it just went in the trash can because there's nothing on file.
With NamUs or with the Muskingum County Sheriff's Department?
There's none nowhere.
I noticed online there isn't a description of the clothing that John was wearing on the day he disappeared. Do you recall what John was wearing that day?
Blue jeans. And he had a white fuzzy looking like a shirt, like a sweater deal. And he had Eastland shoes on.
Brown ones?
Yep, brown Eastland shoes on. But that's what he was wearing the day that I last seen him.
Tell me about the discovery of John's van.
When the van was found, okay, called me and told me to, so he came up and told me, he said, Sarah, he said, I know where the van's at. And he said, you're going to get a phone call. She took and called me and told me where that van was and told me it was on north where you go in behind the Longenberger basket and it goes straight in, takes you into those low-income apartments on Cedar Street.
Yeah.
That's where the van was found. And when she called and told me how to get there, okay, she said to go 16, get off Cedar, and come down in. Well, I did, okay. The easiest way for me, which would have been the easiest way, would have been to go straight in, jump off right there, and go down behind the Longenberger basket. It took you straight shot to it. And when you put straight in, you'd have seen the van sitting right there, parked on the corner. I went in, I knocked on a door, on this one apartment door, and there was a young boy that came to the door. And I said, is your parents here? And I said, could you tell me who drove that van in here? He said, oh, yeah, I know. My dude did. I said, who's your dude? And his dad told him, shut up. He said, that could be a murder case or something. So I got a hold of Licking County, told him I was not leaving there until that van got hauled in to be checked out. In the meantime, I put my fingerprints on the back door because I opened the door to look because I thought maybe I'd find him in there. That's the first thing that came to my head. But he's laying dead in that van. But the shirt that he must have had on was laying on the floor in that van. The white shirt was laying on the floor in that van.
Was the shirt tested?
I don't know. I just know that they took it to North, is where the van went to.
Where is John's van now?
It was sitting down there at Muskingum County, by the dog pound. You know where they got the new dog pound thing? It was sitting in that building right there, and I don't know what they done with it. I don't know if it's just sitting back somewhere in that building. They blocked it off or what, but that's where it was at. And Bob Stevenson told me I could have that van. I go to get it, and they tell me I can't have the van. Well, I'm telling you, they would not release it. Bob Stevenson told me I could have it. I went to go get the thing, and they told me no, I couldn't have it. I have the title to the van. I have all that stuff. You know, I paid it off. I was a co-signer and I paid it off. It wasn't paid off.
Did they tell you how they knew where to find John's van?
No, they did not tell me. Washington Street Apartments in North Ohio.
Okay.
And the North Police Department's got all that on file. They have to. Because they're the ones that came picked the van up, because I sat right there in my vehicle until they loaded it up on a roll-off and took it.
Sarah, tell the listeners about a rumor that you heard, as well as a phone call you received while at John's apartment that he shared with his roommates.
I guess one of the guys is supposed to be such a rough, one of the roughest guys that here around town, but I guess he's supposed to beat him to death and left him there to die. And they're supposed to rob him. And he's always been into drugs heavily. They robbed him, he sat there and they beat him. Then I was out to the apartment house the day that I told you that I was out there.
Mm-hmm.
I got a phone call on John, that rang into their house. They had a phone in there. And I answered it. He said, oh my God, he found John, I found John. He said, they shot him 3 times. I said,
Wow.
well, where's he at? Click went the phone. He must have realized that it wasn't that he was talking to. Just Click went off the phone. My sister called me from Florida, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to see on my own reactions of what, you know, my own simple investigating, you know. I said to her, you know, got done talking to her, and I said, just don't say nothing, just be, you know, to her. And, because I set this up for her to call me. So she did. And I said, yeah, and I said, oh, I said, he was shot. How many times was he shot? Who's that? Who's calling you? Who's that on the phone? I said, that's none of your business. He was on the phone talking to me. I said, well, just let me call you back later, would you? Click. And so they couldn't pick my phone up and push redial or whatever or try to get a number. I just went dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee and hung it up. So if they wanted a number, they got whatever numbers I pushed. Mm-hmm. Now that showed me that, and so I knew he was shot 3 times. And like when I was at the house, at my own house, knew. They could look me in the face and say whatever they wanted to. I knew they know where John's at.
You mentioned that the police believed he was robbed. Would he have had money on him?
Yes, he had $10,000 on him because he wanted me to buy him an automobile. And he showed me $10,000. And I said, no, John, I'm not going out and buying you no automobile. You want one, go get you one. Put it in your name, Mom. I said, no, I'm going out and buy none. And that was like a day before he came up missing. So I knew he had $10,000.
So John's a father. How old was his daughter when he went missing?
Yes, he did. He has a daughter. And he came up missing. She was just a baby. She wasn't even a year old.
What was the relationship like between John and the mother of his child?
They got along pretty good until she started going out on John. When John would go to work, she would go out and go across the road. They used to live across from Holiday Inn with John's friends and party and everything else. And then John and her got into it. And then they split up and she was pregnant. But they didn't want him nor me or none of us around that baby. And John took to court himself, not me, himself, to get visitation rights of his child. So he couldn't have been that bad off of a boy.
Did he get visitation rights?
He got visitation rights, yeah. He had to go there to her parents' house, and I went with him, and they treated us like the worst piece of shit you ever could think of. Put us in a little room, little back porch room with her. And that's as far as we got to go with her. Then finally, they told him that once he got his time in and all and spent time with her, that he would be able to get her on Wednesdays from a certain length of time, and he'd get her every other weekend. And then once she became a year old, he'd get her for a whole weekend. And he'd get her 2 weeks out of the year. I have his visitation right papers back there. He could not have been a bad person to stand up and want to be a father.
Since you and the detective believe John was murdered, did you ever have him declared deceased?
Yes, I have. I had to have it done for the simple reason his life insurance would have expired that I had on him.
Mm-hmm.
I had, when he became 21, well, let's see, I'll forget how he was, anyway, somehow I had to get it done because of the life insurance, and I had him legally declared dead.
Is there anything you think needs to be done to get answers on John's disappearance?
Just beg for help. So I know. I don't know if it would do any good to offer something or what.
Is there anything that you would like to add?
I don't know how I would express it. That even if it was family members, I wish they'd come forward so I could have closure, you know?
John Myron Reed is a missing adult from Zanesville, Ohio. John was last seen by his mother on November 29, 1998, at his apartment. John was 20 years old at the time of his disappearance and would be 40 years old today. John is a white male who is approximately 5 foot 6 inches tall and 175 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. If you have any information on the disappearance of John Myron Reed, please contact the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office at 740-452-3637. Not only can you call the Muskingum County Sheriff's Department, but you can also call private investigator Lily Paisley at 740-252-6958. She will take any tips or leads that you have. After the recording of this episode, I spoke with Lily Paisley. Lily is the private investigator for John, as well as many other cases you may have heard on Missing in Ohio. Lily made me aware of a recent event that was held in honor of John. The event was a success and even produced brand new leads and tips that are being investigated. If and when new details become available, I will do an update episode for John. Missing in Ohio is an affiliate of Missing Person from Ohio. Missing Person from Ohio is a Facebook page ran by Lori Davis devoted to raising awareness for Ohio's missing loved ones. Here is a message from Lori on how Missing Person from Ohio can help you if you have a missing loved one.
Missing Person from Ohio is an outlet for those with missing loved ones where we can publicize their case. I can help ensure that they are listed on the correct organizations. I can talk to the family members about steps that they can take to try to help keep the publicity out there for their missing loved one. And I can also just work with that family to let them understand that someone cares, that we are a group of individuals that really want to help, and we're doing this for the right reasons. We're doing everything that we can to help them bring their missing loved one home. And if we're not able to bring them home, we can at least help support them during the time while they're missing.
If you have a missing loved one and would like us to help you tell their story, please contact us in one of the many methods listed in the show notes. You can find Missing in Ohio on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, and many of the other listening platforms you enjoy. Follow us on Facebook and remember to join our group page to discuss all the cases that you hear on Missing in Ohio. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us at missingpersonsinohio@gmail.com. If you like this podcast and would like to help us raise awareness, please give us 5 stars and leave a review on whatever platform you enjoy. Thank you for listening to Missing in Ohio, Chapter 7, The Disappearance of John Myron Reed. Tune in next time for Chapter 8, The Disappearance of Brian Schaefer.